the first district, and what skills and experiences make you the best first district city council candidate?
I've lived here in Livermore for 10 years. 9 out of those 10 I've been of service to Long Beach and our community. What makes me the best candidate? Well, I want to start off by saying my work started in the nonprofit arena. I worked with small businesses and consulting services, access to capital, and permitting and licensing. So our job was to create and retain jobs in an area very similar to the first district. And then I went on to get my master's in business administration, and I managed projects and programs across the US and Canada. So for me, I've done some nonprofit, some private sector work, and then I went ahead and got, now I'm a small business owner, licensed and awarded Best of Long Beach. So I think there's a lot of, for me I take a lot of pride in being the person that has a unique lens in terms of how much I'm invested in this race. I own here, I live here, my business serves the city of Long Beach, my children attend the school district, and I'm a city commissioner. So again, my name is Mariela Salgado, and I hope to have earn your support in this election.
Again, to you. How long have you lived in the first district, and what skills or experiences make you the best first district city council candidate?
Hi, my name is Mary Zendejas, and I've lived in this district for 5 years. And I have lived in the city for 30. That's why I love Long Beach so much. What qualifies me is that I've been really active and very invested in the community as a whole. And starting back from 30 years ago here at Cal State University Long Beach, I've also been part of the neighborhood leadership program, and also the neighborhood leadership Long Beach, and I am a director at Long Beach Transit, which is one of the top leading transportation agencies in the nation, and I already manage a multi-million-dollar budget every year, so I feel that I'm very qualified to be your next city council person for the first district.
Thank you. Question to you. We're going to read it again?
No.
Okay.
I've lived in the first district for 25 years. My name is Misi Takaloa, and what qualifies me as a candidate is I love the district. Got 3 kids. I grew them in the Long Beach Unified School District, and they're doing well. And I've been all over the place, right? I've been in banking, real estate, financial services, some nonprofit work, and I even did spiritual work. I've been a pastor for the last 20 plus years at Second Someone, a UCC ordained minister. And so I bring that unique cut. It's not just a position for me, it's sort of like my contribution to the world through the district that I love. So I'm hoping to earn your voice and your words.
Hi, my name is Elliot Gonzales. I've lived in the district for 10 years. I'm 32 years old. I've been active in politics since I was 20. I'm greatly concerned about the future of life on this planet, and I'm sure we all are experiencing a lot of the heat, and we understand that there is a threat to all life on the planet. I'd like to recognize the host for honoring the indigenous people of the land, and to understanding that there is a spiritual connection between all life on this earth. And I believe that what qualifies me is the love that I have for this city. There's not a day that goes by where I don't feel this great love for this city that moves me. I think Mayor Garcia has something like that. In fact, that's part of the reason why I'm here to help put pressure on him and the city council, because we need to divest our city off of oil with that love. And it's going to take a great amount of courage to demonstrate the responsibility and leadership that we need to save this planet, to make sure it's healthy and habitable for future generations, to divest from fossil fuels. And that's why I'm running. I should just say I have gum in my mouth. My wisdom tooth is growing in, so this is helping me. So I just want to just acknowledge that in case you're wondering what's going on.
Hi, I'm Joe Ganem. My wife and I have lived in the first district for 8 years and 14 in Long Beach in total. What qualifies me is I've held many positions over my life, which all come to fruition and would benefit the first district. I've been a police officer, I've been a city manager, I've been a trade association executive with 5,000 members, I've been an environmental lobbyist over organizations, both representing them in the state capitol as well as in the nation's capital. I have many experiences here in Long Beach, including having been on 5 nonprofit boards. I was on the Homeless Commission for 4 years. I was president of the Downtown Residential Council. And so I bring all that wealth of experience to bear here in the 1st District, where I think we're behind the curve and need to solve many serious problems. I would appreciate your support on November 5th. Thank you.
And last but not least, my name is Morquecho. I'm running for City Council 1st District, obviously. What I think sets me apart is the fact that I have both private sector and private sector and public sector backgrounds. I kind of cut my teeth after graduating from UC Irvine with a political science degree in basically the large bureaucracy that is California as a taxpayer and a business advocate, and that's what I think needs to happen here in Long Beach. So having the business aspect of my life now, I can see how hard it is to bring small businesses, and I think what's happening in Long Beach is that we need to expand that tax base and make sure that we're going back to what really matters, which is the back to basics approach to governing. Let's make sure that the streets are clean and walkable and safe, the alleys are paved, there's affordable housing, and those cooperations are the things that I'm going to be closest to being able to make that happen, having both that walking the line between private and public sector. So I'm hoping that throughout this evening you can kind of grow to trust that when I say something I mean it, and that's what I would like to do, is bring that trust back to city government. Thank you.
How do you plan to address the rising homelessness in the 1st District?
Oh, okay, so usually it starts with the next person.
Oh, does it start with the next person? Is that how it's worked out? Do you want to go? Okay.
Well, as homelessness, right? One of the things that we need to make sure is that we address the homelessness crisis that is happening right now. We're in an emergency stage right now, and we really need to make it an urgency to be able to provide permanent housing with wraparound services to end the cycle of homelessness. We also need to make sure that we invest in our programs as far as mental health and other programs to make sure that they don't come back into homelessness.
Thank you so much.
So I definitely want to end it, right? And we tried just about everything in the book, and you continue to see a rise in the number of homelessness. Not only that, but people that are couch surfing, people living in vans. We don't see those folks on the streets, but there's an inordinate amount of people that are displaced. So I would like first adopt some sort of a friend of the homeless, or adopt the homeless program, right? I'm going to have to suss that out and figure out what that is. But it's basically creating an ethos in the 1st District where everyone takes care of them. It's like they're part of us, like they're long lost friends that we were estranged with. So I want to be able to codify some of those ideas that I have, so that way we can begin to solve this. It seems like they're dumping all their homeless downtown in the 1st District, and we need to change that a little bit and get other districts to help out with the problem.
So I'm of the belief that housing is a human right. It is declared a human right by the United Nations. I believe that here in the wealthiest country, in the wealthiest state in the history of the world, there's no reason people should be sleeping out on our streets. Not only here in Long Beach, all throughout the state. So I'm here to tell you all something that I like saying, I love saying, it's something we don't hear enough, and that's that the money is there. I am tired of an austerity budget saying the money isn't there for the teachers, oh, the money isn't there for a modern healthcare system, oh, the money isn't there for these homeless people. Folks, the money is there. So one of the ways I plan on financing the housing that we so desperately need, not just for homeless people, but for the working class people, is through a public bank. With the public bank, we have the capital to access whatever type of developments that we need. They've been building lots of housing all throughout downtown Long Beach. That was built with capital, whether it's been borrowed or somebody's investment. So we know that we can build housing. This time we have to actually cater that housing to the people who desperately need it. That includes the homeless and the working class people of the city.
For every homeless person out there, there's a different story. There's a different cause. and there's a different reason why they're out there. But the one thing that they all have in common is they don't have a place to live. Now, we've been spending $30 to $50 million a year in the city budget, and through expenses through the police, fire, public works, parks, and all the rest of them, they're dealing with the consequence of homelessness and not really getting to the source of the problem. And that is, we're not spending any money or virtually no money on housing for the homeless. That's where the solution is. We currently have about 4,000 people that are considered homeless. About 2,000 of those are actually in housing called the Villages of Cabrillo. That's a wonderful program. It works. The problem is we need another one. We either need to double the size of that one or expand on that. Permanent supportive housing with wraparound services to help people get back on their feet is what I've called for. And it is affordable because it's less expensive for the public to pay for that than it is for the consequences of homelessness.
And this is definitely one of those problems that all of us can, see, feel. It's not that we're not empathetic or anything like that, but a lot of times you feel like you're helpless. How do I help this person who maybe isn't in control of their own faculties, or they don't know where they're at, or they have a substance abuse problem, or it is a housing issue? It has to be a multifaceted approach, but it starts from one, being realistic with what actually the problem is. Housing is an issue, but housing is an issue for everybody. This is more of a mental health issue, a substance abuse issue, and things of that nature. So first and foremost, let's just make the multi-service center or something like that 24/7. Homelessness is a 24/7 problem right now. The multi-service center shuts at 4:30. Well, people are homeless at 4:31. So there's issues that we need to make a present move on now, which is cameras, lighting, things that are going to help people, the residents now deal with homelessness or its effects, while also working on housing affordability, building extra beds, making sure that the police officers have the opportunities to react and respond to phone calls. So it's two problems affecting us now and where it's coming from in the long term.
One of the stark data points from our homeless count was that 52% of those counted were experiencing homelessness for the first time. So there's a housing affordability issue, and I think I've stated that there's about 20,000 residents in Long Beach who are precariously housed, meaning at risk of losing their homes on any given day or an emergency. So I think the first thing we should be doing, and the budget's already passed, but we should be looking for funding for prevention. Are we giving rental assistance, utility discounts, or supportive services that will allow them to stay in their homes and prevent them from entering an episode of homelessness? The second is obviously to increase shelter. I mean, we do need to increase shelter capacity, whether we're working with commercial property owners. We need to be creative about how we're placing these folks into housing. And of course, we haven't talked about it, but biohazard issues. I think there's a lot of people in the 1st District that want to make sure that our streets are clean. We have excrement on our streets. We have all kinds of syringes within our parks. So I want to make sure that we have funding for those three. And then you're looking at the long-term impact. So yes, permanent housing is a solution, but that'll take 5 to 7 years. So for me, it's the initial stuff that we need to do, and then looking at funding for longer-term solutions.
Given that the majority of the district's residents are renters, what is your plan for addressing affordable housing?
So we start with building more, and then after we build more, we get them to an equity position. I came to this country and I started renting because that's the only available housing, but as I got to know the system, I put together a down payment and I bought in Long Beach. So I'm not sure if renting is the ultimate goal for building community and sinking roots into a place, but we can start there. And then we have to carve out some portion of what they're paying on a monthly basis to some sort of an equity participation. So that way at the end of 10, 15 years, they have some sort of an equity, something to talk about that they can lever and use to buy something else. So eventually, rental is temporary, but I'd like to see some equity pieces components going on.
So in terms of renting, I'm glad that we started the discussion with homelessness, and I really like Mariella's point of 52% being newly homeless. So we know it is connected to the market. When we talk about a housing crisis, we're talking about a market created crisis. And I just want to remind everyone where we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we had another housing crisis, which is a sign of an unhealthy economy. So I think that we need to invest in something outside of the market. I'm calling for what's called a public land trust, and this is a legal entity that owns the land and develops the housing specifically for the purpose of making sure that it's affordable and accessible to all. Right now, what we are all subject to when your rents go up because the landlord sent you a letter, what we're subject to is market volatility, and that is creating economic displacement. What we need is something that is geared towards only providing housing, specifically making sure that it's affordable, not something with a market incentive.
I think I'm the only candidate that's created an actual plan. I call it the Home Futures Fund. And the idea behind it is simple, that there is patient money that's put into long-term financing to get a return when somebody is retiring. And that money could in turn go into a housing fund by passage of a municipal bond that's tax-free, that the funds go in there, that when people want to buy something or somebody wants to build a rental apartment property, they can access that source, and as a result, they can get up to 20% of their funds that are not repayable until such time as they either sell it or 10 years expires. Imagine the equity increases that people can gain. Well, that investor in those funds gets paid back the same way. They only get paid back in the equity increases, not in monthly payments and not in interest payments. So that will help out those that are trying to buy, and for those that are in rental properties, when a rental property is going to be built using this fund, they will have to set aside a certain amount for people that are affordable units.
So as a renter, this kind of hits close to home. You can see, when I first moved here 13 years ago, I had a studio apartment for $750, I think, and it had a garage, which is unheard of. I think the garage now runs for $750. The major thing that you have to know is there's all of these wonderful things that people are putting out there as solutions, but the major thing is these are all lofty goals. The major thing is this is a market-created shortage, and people want to live here. So the way you do that is by doing what government does best: regulate the things you don't want and deregulate the things you do want. So you have to regulate the luxury apartments and costs and add costs to that, and then unburden the low-income or affordable housing so that they focus on building that. If you make this less profitable than this, you get more of this. And that happens immediately. Right now they have a 10-year plan. The mayor and the city council have all said that they have this as a priority, but their 10-year plan has 7,000, 5,000 of those units are luxury apartments because those are the only ones that investors can afford to put their money into. So you have to take away the regulation and put it and make it more affordable housing. That's what the goal is, to do that immediately.
So I think a lot of people, yes, we have some different solutions to this issue, but I want to keep in mind that the current structure set up sort of what we're seeing in the first district. A lot of people are experiencing, I think the other day I heard somebody who had a $900 increase. So for me, it's important to note that the current council has set up that we had 90% of luxury apartments developed in the first district. So we want to make sure that we're creating housing in the future, but we want to make sure that it's something that we're collectively doing for across the city. I believe it's a city, a regional, a state issue, and one in which we have to do across. So we need to be building, yes, for all incomes and all abilities. And there we probably need to revisit the LUP. You know, are there opportunities to increase mixed use and mixed use projects? Or I know with the passage of the ADUs at the state level, we could also be looking at perhaps creating a pre-approved plan. A pre-approved plan of the ADUs so that we can expedite the way the licensing and permitting is and reducing the cost for that. So I think this approach requires more than just one approach. It requires looking at things creatively, looking at things from a development standpoint, looking at things from an economic opportunity. There's certainly more than just one answer.
Agreed. One of the things that we really need to look at right now is approving, and I'm hoping that this will pass, approving the inclusionary housing so that we can have more affordable housing being built. Inclusionary housing would be a solution to to something that could have been done a long time ago with the the downtown plan that was implemented. We could have had that already, and we could have been farther along, and maybe not so much in the affordable housing crisis that we are in today. We also need to make sure that we build more affordable housing, which we all agree on, for the lower income earners, that's the population that is really being hurt.
Elliot, how do you plan to support growth and development in the district while simultaneously supporting small and local businesses?
Sure. So I do believe in progressive taxation, especially when we have to deal with budget cuts and deficits and pending talk of recession. So I would think we should put the financial burden on those companies that have the revenues. So I'm calling to increase the minimum wage to $20 by 2020 for high-earning companies, so it would be based on income. I'm especially looking at multinational companies that have overseas assets. A lot of these companies, these companies, you shop at these companies, Walmart and other organizations like that. If they were to invest in higher minimum wages, we have more money to spend on Main Street. The problem is right now, if you go to a lot of the small businesses, I know some folks in here are small businesses, consumers, if they don't feel empowered, they're kind of skipping. They may want that better product and just shop at these boutique stores that unique mom and pop businesses establish, but you need money, you need purchasing power to be able to actually spend the way you would like to. So I think that we need to get consumers to become economically empowered. I believe we do that with the public bank, and I believe that we do that with the higher minimum wage on multinational corporations.
One of the greatest employers all across the country are small businesses. We have plenty of opportunities still left here in the East Village to be able to do that. We don't have nearly the empty storefronts we had a few years ago, and it's getting better. But the First District also includes the West Side. And if the West Side's not doing well, then they're also a drain on the resources for the entire city. And you can go over there and you see lots and lots of places that are boarded up or bars on the window, and they have a high crime rate, high poverty rate. So this process of looking at economic development needs to go citywide, district-wide. And one of the things that I call for are increases in improving our technology so we can bring companies in that can use the benefit of some of the lower cost availability of properties here in Long Beach to bring in their startup companies to house technology operations, to bring people that can earn the kind of money that we can properly tax and therefore benefit everybody.
So this kind of goes hand in hand with the expensive rental properties and stuff like that. That's also has to do with retail as well. The West Side has its own set of problems with people camping in RVs and ordinances and breaking in, and California has long been that place where everyone came and they kind of took advantage of that by higher taxes, higher regulations, higher fees, all of these different things, and we've kind of seen that mass exodus. So again, this goes back to the same thing about building. And when I presented this and was lucky enough to get the endorsement of the Chamber of Commerce here in Long Beach, the plan was to change the culture that's in government. The major thing is that we have to see these, not as PD banks, but as Elliot said, these are people who are hiring. These are job creators, and small businesses do actually create wealth out of an empty storefront. So how do we make sure that the regulations, the people who are trying to put in new businesses and new opportunities have the full support of Long Beach? That means that they have the inspectors coming out right away, because time is money. There's business plans, and if it's delayed by a month or by a week, they cost money, and sometimes they shut it the first time. So it's hard enough to start a business, and we need to make sure that we support them throughout the process.
I really think about development as we need to be looking at it from an economic inclusion lens. Our district currently has about 46% of our kids in poverty, and there are stark inequities between East and West Long Beach. And so for me, it's very important that we're looking at promoting businesses, our students, our youth, and adults and seniors. So we're providing these economic opportunities, and we're looking at it from an equity lens, because too often folks are not having the same opportunity. So investing in the communities, investing in the people. In terms of businesses, there's something that we see now in Bixby Knolls, it's a PIDD, which is Business Improvement Districts, but that's only in Bixby Knolls. We should be looking at having things like that across the entire city, so that we have opportunity for businesses to improve. Like I said earlier, I worked in nonprofit, and one of the things that I thought was very successful is when you're outreaching and working with the businesses where they're at. Because as a business owner myself, I will tell you, it's very difficult to wear the so many hats that we wear on a day-to-day basis. So somebody to come to my store and help me with growth, or leveraging, for example, also leveraging the global relationships we have at the port to expand the opportunities. So maybe that there's a manufacturer in our warehouse industry in the first district. Can we give them an opportunity to expand? And we're providing the consulting services to have them expand in the access to capital. So really going to them and improving their businesses, I think, important.
One of the things that I would really like to see is the expansion of the Long Beach Business First programs, which gives the small businesses here in Long Beach and in the First District a chance to compete and get city contracts. Another thing that would be really great would be to require developers to actually use small businesses in their retail development plan that they have, or in their amenities that they're going to be offering. So I think that would be really good to bring in the community who is already in existence right now. Also, we do a lot of filming, especially in the First District. I think that we need to really say that they need to be required to use the local businesses that they are using at the time, or where they're filming at the time, so that those businesses will not lose the revenue that they have on that particular day. So, and also business improvement programs in our district are very much needed.
I'm sorry, what was the question
The
again?
question again is, how do you plan to support growth and development in the district while simultaneously supporting small and local businesses?
Well, the question presupposes that you can do one without the other, right? But in essence, you can do both, right? You can do simultaneously. So I would advocate for laws that do that, right? Both the entrepreneur and also the big business. We'll attract the big business, but we will have them take a closer look at our community. So that way we have a robust artist community, entrepreneur community. We're surrounded by this space, right? And the whole artist community is so vibrant, so robust. You can make stuff up and put a dollar amount on it and then sell it. I mean, that's how creative this community can be. But to assume that we can do one without the other, I think we need to take a closer look at that philosophy and just check it out and see if that is true or not.
How do you plan to educate the public on the growing concerns about scooter safety for both residents and riders?
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that. We were going to have a presentation here. First of all, one of my past lives was as executive director of the Bicycle Federation of Washington State, where we had 16,000 members. And one of the things that we did was took an annual bike ride from Seattle all the way to Portland, Oregon. So I'm very familiar with non-motorized transportation. I was on the Governor's Transportation Enhancement Committee back in the early 90s. I helped to carve out $20 million for it. I think that we've got an issue with these scooters. I'm very interested in the process. I think it's a great idea, but frankly, I'm concerned about the safety. And I don't think they honestly belong in the street where they're now in place. But at the same time, we've got to do something to change the ethos that these kids, or whoever it is, can ride a scooter on the sidewalk at 20 miles an hour in the presence of pedestrians. So I think there's going to have to be some significant enforcement, and people are going to have to realize there are rules for the road for everybody, including those on their feet.
This is actually, it's obviously a very specific question, but it actually points to a larger issue, which is we have a lot of code enforcement and a lack of, not necessarily rule of law, but a lack of policing that's actually on the ground level. So I think that what needs to happen is from a city council point, it is information in and it's information out, which points to a better connected community. That's priority number one, because whether it's public safety or homelessness or affordable housing.
There, sure, we can deter it from a technology standpoint. We can deter the speed from 25 miles an hour to maybe about 50, but the larger point is enforcement. But I'd like to take one layer back, which is, we should have more community policing to enforce that. We should have actually the political will to maybe not spend on certain projects like this. It's not that I don't think that that's the future of mobility, but I will tell you this is also a liability for the city that's waiting to happen. I met a woman in the Plymouth West building, a 90-year-old woman who lost her hearing on her right ear because she was hit by an e-scooter. So with that, within the first district, we have a lot of senior buildings, and I think while it's an enforcement issue, I still think that we need to be looking at it from a perspective of we could be spending that money elsewhere. We are putting ourselves in a liability perspective from a city standpoint, because it's a matter of time that somebody's going to sue the city, and I'm sure as East Village residents here, you probably have a higher propensity of interacting with them than I do in the Wilmore area, but it is a nuisance, and I think we can do more to enforcement, and that requires us to place our police officers in the community, but also have more, have our expenditures be elsewhere as opposed to promoting something that looks good.
Again, it is an enforcement issue. I was really looking forward to the presentation today, to learning about all of it, how it works and everything. I think that being a long time advocate for the disability community and the seniors, that we have, we really have to take a long, hard look at, is this helping us or hurting us? I know that from what I hear in the community, a lot of the seniors are scared by that because they don't stay in their lane per se, right? They come up on the sidewalk where they shouldn't be. And I think that maybe it would be a really good idea if we look into geo-fencing, which means that if they go outside of where they're supposed to be, that they will go at a very, very low speed. So that way, it will discourage them from going on the sidewalks where they can hurt other people.
This is a new technology. We have to be open to new technologies. And what Mary said about geofencing, I think that's our wanting to sort of like curb it so it doesn't harm people. So I'm open to e-scooters. And this whole notion of micro-mobility, the ability to go from one block to the next a little bit faster than just walking, using an e-scooter, I think that's environmentally friendly. So I would support that. Education is important. We need to roll out some policies and guidelines. We need to maybe invite people who will wear helmets, right? Get a license and make sure they take care of it, right? Park it well so that the next person will be responsible.
I just want to say that we are responding to a problem that, as if it's our issue for us to solve. This is a private company that set up a business in the middle of the sidewalk, all over the city. It's dangerous. So a woman was killed by one of these things. She was assaulted with one right here in Long Beach. And there's no accountability. You can't just open up a business. I opened up a nursery a couple of years ago, a little selling cactus and stuff like that. I had to go to the city manager. I had to pay somebody. I had to go. They had to review all of my floor plan and everything. I don't understand how this whole thing happened, that there's a private business that's not a poor business by any means, managed to make such a significant investment, and we have to respond. We're talking about bringing our police. Who's going to pay for the police? We're going to pay for the police to clean up scooters? No, these are private companies. They need to be responsible for every user and every piece of equipment that they own, and they need to pay the city and have it all on a floor plan and be accountable for each and every product.
Great. How are you planning to support the arts in the East Village?
Good question. This is one of those things where it again points to a larger issue. Everything of this points to a larger issue when you talk to me, because everything's interconnected. And one of those things is Long Beach's City Council's #1 priority is to budget. If you're in charge of the $500 million general fund, and where does that money go? This is a very simple issue where you just go, what are the priorities and what are the benefits of the arts? Well, the arts are this wonderful area where people can become communal, they can understand each other, they can express each other, and it needs to be funded. At the same time, it needs to be rolled into other programs like grant assistance from either the county or federal level, things of that nature where we support the arts. Because I mean, I remember when I was going to school, that was already getting cut back in terms of STEM programming, and you really do have to remember that it's got two sides of the brain, and it's just as important to have a vibrant art culture as well as a scientific mathematic culture. So it's just as simple as saying part of what I would like to do is have someone in the actual council office that has an arts focus as well as a business focus, because you need both.
You know, I want to keep in mind that I think part of our job is to empower our neighborhoods and our businesses and build community. And I think that's something that's lacking. We have in respects of like our budget, right now we have 71 cents of every dollar going into public safety. So it doesn't allow for as much investment in our communities and our people. And I think that's important. One of the things I always hear and often hear from people that they love about Long Beach is the people of Long Beach, the artists, the businesses, the character, but we're not investing in them. So for me, it's about having the political will to say this is a priority. As a Parks and Recs Commissioner, I can tell you that our parks budget is also being decreased. Our youth fund is being decreased. So there's certain things that are being decreased that I think really impact the quality of life of our First District residents, of our First District businesses. And so for me, it's a matter of saying that's a priority, and this is why. Because I think investing in the people of the Long Beach, investing in our businesses is a priority. The shiny new things are not a priority to me. We need to go back to the basics and look at what is it that's building community and making us safer, making us feel welcome, giving us economic opportunity. I think the future of Long Beach lies in inclusion, access, and economic opportunity. And inclusion includes the arts.
Yes, I love the arts, and maybe it's because I'm not that creative, right? And I love everything about being here today. This is fascinating to me. And it's very important. And one of the things that I think is that we really need to invest in not only in the downtown area of our district, but also in the northern part of our East Village, 10th and Long Beach Boulevard. One of the things that I want to bring about as a First District Councilwoman would be to create a program a plan where no blank wall is, something where we can have, artists come and display their art, have a day of celebration. Art comes in so many shapes and sizes, and we need to celebrate those. And one of my things that I want to do also is to bring about youth programs, because youth is where they blossom in art and where they find their creativeness. And I think that it's very important for us to create those programs for our youth.
I would increase the art budget, start there. And then I'll look for places where the community gathers organically to put together these arts and kind of like encourage them along. I know artists, they don't need a whole lot of space other than freedom and the ability to just create. We have a festival called Tafis Ilafai, Pacific Islander Festival. We're in our 23rd year of putting that festival together, and that doesn't receive any help from the city. But something like that where a community comes together and say, this is of value for us, we're willing to put some community dollars to it and sweat equity. The city comes along and raises that up and embrace it. And I think our arts community will be vibrant.
Myself, the arts is very dear to me. I used to work in the art gallery right here in the East Village on First and Linden. It's during the recession. I've seen it go through so many ups and downs. I believe that one of the most important things that we can do to invest in the arts community, as someone who's influenced by the arts, inspired by the arts, is invest in housing so that it's affordable for artists to live here. You know, we have places in the East Village that artists can't even afford to live in, yet we plan on developing some type of arts community. How are we going to do that? If it's $1,600 a month, you know, we have to make sure that that housing is affordable and accessible for artists. I used to live in an arts commune in downtown. It was a wonderful experience. I'll never get that time back in my life. I very much treasure it. And I can tell you affordable housing was a big part of that. That's how we got to share space and create together. That's the world we were trying to build. And I think my campaign is very much influenced by the arts. You'll probably recognize that artistic inspiration in our campaign and in everything that we do, especially if I get elected. I'll make sure to incorporate cultural programming as part of what we do as an office.
Well, I spent 5 years studying the arts through college and from high school through college. And we have one son who actually earns his living as a graphic artist. He happens to be employed by a small company called Amazon. And, you know, so we're very steeped in it. If you came to our house, there's not a wall that isn't covered by some kind of art. So, and this is important to us. Long Beach, I think, has a number of artists, the East Village in particular, and the First District. What we don't have, and this is where the city can come in, is a kind of marketing program that encourages more people to come to Long Beach. How about an arts festival of serious proportion? I'm not talking about something that just goes along Linden Avenue. That's good as a starting point, but how about something, you know, of major proportion to draw attention to people that are all around the LA Metro as well as the region, and to come to Long Beach and recognize that we've got a quality of artists, we have a culture of art, and we need to celebrate it here in Long Beach.
All right, so now we are going to open up for questions, and Stephanie will call on you. If you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, and Stephanie will call on you.
Anybody have a question? Yes.
I have a question. Even though I don't believe it's part of the First District, what do you think of the road diet on Broadway? Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
I'll take it.
Go ahead, Joe.
I mentioned earlier I was a bicyclist, and still today. When I'm not campaigning, I'll bicycle 30 to 50 miles a week, sometimes even more. So this is very important to me. And I used to be a city manager. I can tell you right now, when I look at that situation there, I have to ask myself, did anybody ever consult the neighborhood and the businesses along that area? Did anybody consult the bicyclists themselves? Because if they did, it's not obvious. If you were a bicyclist or a business owner or a resident in that area, you would have planned that completely different. And what you do is you make all the changes on paper where it's cheap. Now you've got a situation, you've spent millions of dollars and you've implemented something and people are raising hell, and rightfully so. I don't frankly think you need a bike lane wide enough that an elderly couple can make the mistake of trying to drive their car down it and hit pedestrians and people on a bicycle. That shows that there was a mistake that was made.
I've been watching that dialogue between Janine Pierce and the constituents. Janine is a good friend of mine, and it just reeks of non-democratic forces going on, right? I mean, this is what we're lacking. We're lacking that robust discourse, that civil, that undergirds what democracy is, government of the people for the people, right? And there are leaders who don't like to go there because it's messy, but that's what we need to do. We need to get a little messy, right, so we don't have those big messes when the diets come through. So I just want to leave it there.
And being an advocate for people with disabilities and seniors, I know that we were not taken into account when those were made, because me, like a lot of other people with disabilities and seniors, get curb-to-curb pickups with dial lift or access. And now they don't know where to pick us up. And so that's one of the things that I look forward to bringing to council with me, that perspective and seeing things with that, through there, because Joe said it very well. We could have figured that out in paper, and it would have been much, much less expensive than it is right now. And I do see that we're going to have to be making changes soon to that.
I will add that this speaks to something, in my opinion, where systems in our government work in silos. We have that road diet happened, and then you had now a new iteration of sorts that's going to happen that's at the cost of the taxpayer. In regards to transit, for example, you have bus stops now that don't have the coverings. This speaks to a larger issue of working in silos. And for me, as a leader and someone who's been involved and wears different hats as a business owner, a homeowner, a parent, one that has a broad work experience, for me it's very important that I'm looking at it from different hats to ensure that we're collectively looking at this and that we're coming up with the best solutions. I think as leaders and as government officials, we really also need to be mindful and be fiscally prudent for our taxpayers. So having to know that road diet now has to get fixed again, that's more money that's being spent that could have been spent elsewhere. And so for me, it speaks to also the political will. And I think people can say everything they want on this end over here, but ultimately it's who's going to have the political freedom to have that action and to speak to it, as opposed to having to have special interest at the table and make those decisions that really don't make sense for the people or for the businesses that it's impacting.
Well, I was going to respond as well, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say very quick, I hate it. but I think a lot of people don't, and it does highlight a lot of things that are wrong with city government and government as a whole. It's how do we do this right now, and that's not how things are best done. But what we do need to do is take it as an example and a cautionary tale, because we are going to be denser and denser. That's the only way you're going to have more housing and do that stuff and kind of lower costs. So we have to be able to see 30, 40 years down the road if we want to be bicycle friendly, if we want to have more mass transit, if we need to make implementations now in that vein going forward. Do we have to study places abroad, whether it's New York City or Singapore, or places that we want to emulate that high density area that's also cleaner, better using, safer. Those are the things where we have to start using best practices rather than just saying, hey, we're going to do this thing and let's just put it out there as fast as possible, because then you make mistakes and have to spend taxpayer money again.
Yes.
I have a question. We hear a lot about how money has influenced politics and how money influences candidates and their election and people that are in office. And right now, the East Council member and the mayor has what they call a office holder account. And I'm wondering how each of you feel about this office holder account. There's been a lot of discussion about how it is not very democratic. It's a political thing.
I think what's happening now is a travesty. The office holder account was originally set up with the idea that council members have events and activities that they want to do in their district that might not fall in line with the city's type of expenditure. So if they want to hold a picnic, or they want to put on a movie, or they want to invite people to visit the fort and so forth, they can do that with the office holder account. A little while back, it was expanded to where the council person could do pretty much anything, including contribute to other candidates' campaigns. That was never the intention. When that thing started happening, I stopped giving to office holder accounts. If I want to give to a candidate, I give to the candidate. I don't want somebody else making that decision for me. It should never have been allowed. It needs to stop. And if I'm elected, I will absolutely do everything I can to bring it to a stop, because that should not be the way that particular fund is abused.
Can I just add that that day that they were making this determination, that this very concern that, and Joe is describing exactly as it is, was brought up, and the council members that were for it were saying, no, that's not going to happen. I swear we're not going to use it for that. It doesn't become like a slush fund for other campaigns and campaigning. It's just for, movies at the park and stuff like that. And it turned out to be exactly as we're describing it. One candidate in this race got $40,000 this past weekend. $10,000 from the mayor, $10,000 from the fire department, $10,000 for Senator Gonzales, and another $10,000 for Robert Garcia for lieutenant governor. I don't know who donated to Robert Garcia for the lieutenant governor because he hasn't yet had to report that donation. But $10,000 is a lot of money. I'm over here asking my people $10, $50, $100. I'm so thankful someone gives me a whopping $100. And you got candidates getting $10,000 from one person overnight? No, folks, this is what we're talking when we talk about corruption in politics. You don't know where the money's coming from.
I have a question.
If I may just add, I think this speaks to, again, the campaign reform. Yes, that probably was not the initial intention. It was added to also triple the budget, I think, than what it originally was, which gives way to exactly what we're seeing. It's, you have a special interest at the table looking to ensure that the representative they choose is going to represent this district versus the people's choice. And I believe it's the people's choice. And so for me, I proudly want to say that I am the only candidate supported by community and by community leaders, because I think it's a representation. This district has been historically underserved for decades for a reason. We have less than 15% of voters that are going to vote in this district. So it is a systematic issue, and we need to break those systems to ensure that representation is important, that representation matters, and it's taking a seat at the table. As a Parks and Recs Commissioner, I'm the first one to represent that seat, and over 20 plus years from the first district. And I will tell you, we have the least amount of green space and the least amount of programming. So it's a matter of looking at these kinds of systems of campaign reform and looking at it and being more transparent. And that's very important. Oversight, transparency, and accountability are crucial in government, and I think that's something that, for me personally, I bring to the table as a small business owner, because I live in that world every day. In my private sector experience, that's what I need to do. I needed to meet deadlines as a project manager, and I think that's important to bring into this realm.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to follow up a little bit. The issue of money in politics is, if you can figure out a way to pull that apart, more power to you, because I don't know if that's ever going to be something that we can do without adding the necessary step, which is getting people involved in politics. The reason why you have money is because people can instantly buy influence. You can literally say everything that you want, but I don't think anybody up here would say, oh no, I would definitely turn down Robert Garcia's endorsement or lean against. Everyone was seeking it in the beginning, and then the people that didn't get it went with a different tactic. So everyone just stop pretending that politics isn't this wonderful little game all plays. So when money happens to come in, it's not necessarily they're buying someone's vote. It's that they agree with the vote and they hope that that person is in there so that they can also work it out. The major thing to stop that or combat it is you have to get people to vote. And in this district and in our country as a whole, people are so tuned out because they're just becoming completely apathetic. They don't think anything's going to change. They don't trust anybody. And that's the thing that I want to change, is I want to be completely open and honest and go, hey, absolutely. If you want to give me money, here's the list. Here's the list of the money that I was given. But here's the reason why. Because I agree that we need to have more housing. I think that we need to get more community involvement, and there has to be a get out the vote movement, because the only way you get money out of politics is get the people back in.
Yes. Oh, of course I am. I wanted to say that thank you, Ray, for that and for making it very clear that yes, I'm one of the candidates who I've been raised I've raised the most money out of all the candidates, and I'm very proud of doing that. And the reason that I'm proud of that is because 2/3 of my donations come from individual donors. I've raised over $60,000, maybe more by now. But I'm really excited that I have donors from my little godson, who's 5 years old, who gave me $1 for my rate. For him to give that to me was the best. That's probably the dollar that I cherish the most, up to the maximum of $2,500, And I think that shows so much, because we've all been there for all of the endorsements. Every single, I've been at the endorsement meetings with almost everybody here on stage. And time after time, I have been chosen. And the reason is that Long Beach is ready for a council person like me, for someone that's compassionate, someone that really wants this, someone who really, really loves Long Beach and is going to do a great job at it, someone who is willing to bring everybody to the table, because I know what inclusion really is. And that's what Long Beach is ready for, and that's why I've been working really, really hard every single day, and I'm not going to stop until November 5th, when I make sure that all of my voters in the district know that I'm going to work hard for them so that I can make their dreams come true of me being their councilwoman on November 5th.
I have a question. Yes, to you. It kind of breaks my heart a little bit that you said that you think that the Broadway project was a mistake, clearly a mistake with the black thing. But I got a letter this week from the mayor that has been friends with you for 20 years. Can you tell me how you're going to get him to help disability people when, as a good friend, he didn't talk to you about what might make your life better on the streets?
Yes, I think that's a really great question, because as you know, sitting on city council, you need at least 5 of the votes. So I'm really happy to say that I have a good relationship with almost everybody on council. I went to school with Mayor Robert Garcia. I went to school with Susie Price. Now I can bring a face to the issues that I bring forward, because I live those issues. I am from the community. I've been in the community. So yes, that is disappointing. And yes, I have talked to him about it. So, you know, now we have to go through all this of bringing the community into it and making sure that people like us don't get left out. And that's why I want to be on city council, because people with disabilities and seniors keep being overlooked, and it's time for somebody to step up and bring that voice to city council.
This person has been waiting on us.
This is you respond. So my question is, I'm not sure if we have to live in the district to run, but who in the community would know of you through what, like through non-paid volunteer activities? What are you best known for?
Are you asking about everyone?
Of everyone.
Okay.
Oh,
Do you live in the 1st District?
No, I don't.
Okay, so for my campaign, I mean, we're dropping literature into the community. I pastor the Second Samoan Church. It's hard to miss that white church on the corner of 7th and Cedars. I've been there for 25 years. So I've done a lot of things, right? And because of my ethos, I don't toot my own horn. But now running for office, I'm gonna have to beep, you know, beep. So
to answer your question, not to step on BC's toes or anything, but to answer your question directly, yes, you have to live in the district. There's certain laws and all that fun stuff. And if I can speak plainly for everyone, we're all good candidates, but we're all running on differences and how we're going to implement plans that are the best. And a lot of us have had a really long time of being volunteers and different things of that nature. Myself, community building, business advocacy, taxpayer advocacy, that's in this region, and then neighborhood associations.
But he's a pastor, so he's known for being a pastor. Like, what are you known for? What is Mariella known for? What are you known for? Like, could you give me one thing you're known for in the community?
yes.
Yeah.
Let's give him a chance to answer the question. Let's go person by person.
Honestly, it's volunteerism, it's beach cleanups, it's different things of that. I'm not going to stand up on a soapbox and say that I'm the best known person in the district, but that's what campaigning is for. You have to be willing to say, hey, I've been doing these things, and as a person who was fairly humble, I didn't really kind of, again, shout that out, but now you have to, like Nisi said, you have to kind of toot your own horn. It is slightly uncomfortable.
I was, as I said, I was president of the Downtown Residential Council. I was one of the founders of the Ocean Residents Community Association. I helped to reactivate the East Village where we live in currently. I'm president currently of the Blue Homeowner Association, where I've been on the board the last 6 years. I helped to create the Meet Your Next Mayor event that we had 5 years ago with Mayor Garcia when he first ran. I put on leadership conferences for up to 50 people, training them on how to create neighborhood leadership groups. You've seen me, if you've been out and about, in cleanups, in tree plantings, in all kinds of events. I was on the homeless commission for 4 years. The city manager appointed me to the downtown to the downtown entertainment and dining district task force, which met for a year to create new rules for how you operate in downtown without creating noise problems. So I've been out there.
Myself, I've been active, like I said, for the past 12 years. I got started trying to save the main library. There's a park on top of the main library. I thought it was worth saving.
I'm a graduate of them. I've been in Leadership Long Beach, a graduate of them. I've helped create programs for businesses and earned interns with Pacific Gateways. I have created a mentorship program for people with disabilities by hiring students at Cal State Long Beach and mentoring Jordan High School students. I have been a mentor myself for the past, a volunteer mentor for the past 10 and a half years. The list goes on and on. Right now I'm currently the president of the Disabled Resource Center here in Long Beach. I am also sit on the board for Long Beach Transit. And I'm also still volunteering as a mentor.
If I may ask, was your question for the city or for the district?
For the district that you're trying to run for.
The district, okay. So I just want to share a personal story. You know, I was an undocumented student. I was a dreamer before there were dreamers. And so as I grew up, I come from very humble beginnings, and my mother taught me what it meant to be of service because I was the recipient of service of others. So for 20 years, I've been of service to many organizations over the last 20 years. But in the first district specifically, you know, one of the reasons why I personally know each of our neighborhood association board members and leaders is because I've made the effort over the years to make contact, to be of service to them. Currently I serve as an Edison school site council member. It's the 4th lowest performing school. You know, my husband always says, you want to know what we do? Ask us what we do in our free time. And what I do in my free time is because I'm an educated Latina who has a plethora of work experience, I take a seat at that table and I advocate for those that are not represented. And I'll tell you, at Edison Elementary, I took the seat at that table on my free time because I wanted to make sure that the kids had more educational, recreational opportunities. The reason why I'm a Parks Commissioner is for the same reason. The reason why I'm part of the chamber is for the same reason. Small businesses and people in underrepresented communities are not being represented. And so for me, it's very important that I'm taking the seat at the table and representing what this district is, which is not just the downtown area, it's in the entire West Side area that has been historically underserved. So I think more importantly is, you know, what work have we done? And I'll tell you, I volunteer hundreds of hours a year between my husband and I, including my kids, to be a service to the city and to be a service to this district.
Can I ask that we all respect the time? I just, you know, just for fairness, I just want to ask everybody.
It's more of a suggestion.
Great. We have time for about 2 more minutes. 2 more questions, speaking of time.
I just want to say, as a non-apathetic citizen, it really is important for me to see candidates who are not receiving help from other people within their community in the sense of not getting any personal donations, but corporate and other donations, mainly because the conversation on the macro, if we all understand, is Mary Zendejas is running without any help from the corporation and is not being allowed to be on the DNC and actually debate. And I think it's time to really allow the people who are not part of the establishment to give them an opportunity to run so that we can actually get things done. And that's my personal opinion.
Did you have a question?
And I'd like to comment on that. Being a woman in a wheelchair, being a woman who has never been part of the establishment, I think it's time that we give an opportunity to people who have disabilities to be seen just as fairly as anybody else. And it's time, you know, people forget that, you know, having a disability is a whole other struggle. You can't imagine how harder it is for me to be here tonight than anybody else. But that's okay. I'm still here, and that's what I know how to do is work really hard, 3 times harder than anybody else. And that's what I will give on council. So thank you for that.
Let me just comment about that. Because what you had just pointed to is what we're experiencing, right? This chaos, and we don't know what to do with it, right? We don't know what to do with it. All the legacy structures that has brought us together are now crumbling because of that voice, right? And for a long time, these were no one knew about it, but for the internet and transparency now, everybody knows about it. Right? So the question, more relevant question, how do we hold our community moving forward, knowing that? And I think the art community has a lot to contribute. Because art, I think, is an antidote to chaos. And if we do that well, we fund it well, we'll have these artists, that are invested for something a little bit bigger than just a regular campaign. So,
well, the gentleman on the right was saying about, really allowing people to stop being so apathetic by giving them opportunity. So I think that is really what I'm trying to address, is that allowing the establishment to continue to just bring more established people doesn't give us an opportunity as a community to really come together and create the kind of community that we're looking for from the individuals that have so much experience without having to ever run or hold office or know someone because, you've been so involved in the community. I don't think you have to be involved in the community to really know what the community needs.
I can't agree more. And one of the reasons that motivated me to run in this campaign is we expect something like a 15% turnout in this election. It's pathetic. We have 23,000 registered voters, 50,000 residents in this community. We have seen term after term after term where big money has come in and dictated who's going to win this race. You can go all the way back probably 20 years and seen that, okay? I came into this race, I do not have big money donors. I have individual donors who've contributed the maximum that they can do, which by the way is 1,000, not 2,500. And I have a lot of small donors. I don't have any PACs and I don't have any corporations. If you look at my background, I should be the establishment candidate, but I'm not. And that's one of the reasons. And I think until we get that level of money out of politics, we're not going to see this district's cynicism rise to enthusiasm, which will bring out more people to vote and make them feel like they're more part of this district.
Yes, you'll be the last question.
I'm agree with her because this is I don't know if it's a question or it's a opinion, but I'm agree with her that this time Long Beach needs somebody is going to work for the district.
Yeah.
Actually, anyone who receive money for anyone is hired. It could be companies. They always looking for something, always, and I know that. Okay, so that is what we need. Somebody that's going to be really, really trustworthy. We can count in the city, in the first district. Don't get no excuses for nobody to say, oh, I got money from this company, I got money from the mayor, I got money from you, from that. Obviously, we need to work, and we need to trust in someone that really wants to work. To me, that's what we need in Long Beach.
And one of the things that, if I may add to that, one of the things that I'm very, very proud of is that most of the money that I have received has come from our labor organizations. Those organizations that represent our hardworking families. Those organizations that represent our women in our hotels. Those hard worker women in our hotels. Those organizations that represent the city employees. I have an array of donors, and it makes me very proud because I have the labor, the LA Labor Federation, as well as other businesses, and it just brings so much, coalition, and it's so much diversity, and I'm so very proud of what I've received, and I hope that I am exactly what the establishment is not. I am exactly that candidate that is not known to be from the establishment. So I am
The establishment is the one that's supporting you, and that's what doesn't look right to us.
And that's why maybe it's a time for change to bring a good person.
So then why are you accepting funds from the establishment that you're trying to say that is the issue? You're contradicting yourself.
You've already asked your question. Mary, answer it, and then we're done with the questions. We have to move on. Thank you.
Why? Because I have to work, and I knew I was going to have to run a very aggressive campaign because I am not able to knock on every single door. I don't have that luxury. There are steps, there are elevators there that don't work, So I have to be creative, and I knew that at the beginning of my campaign that I was going to have to be creative and raise a lot of money so that I can send mailers, so that I can be creative in reaching the voters so that my message can reach them.
Okay. Was there a question? I think it was more of a statement, and I think that statement was towards Mary, and then she answered it. So thank you so much, everyone. We have Carla from Lime Scooter, so we're going to transition to that. I ask that everyone just kind of go ahead and stay put, and then Carla's going to sit right here. And she is going to just do a quick 15 to 20 minute conversation on Lime Scooters.
Hi everybody, my name is Carla Wane. I am the Senior Manager of Government Relations for Lime in Southern California. For those who are not familiar with Lime, we are a multimodal micromobility company. We were founded January of 2017. We are coming up right on that 3-year mark. I think we're multimodal because we have pedal bikes, e-assisted scooters, and car sharing in our fleet. And we've been operating in the Greater LA region since last year. We actually entered Long Beach in August of 2018, so we actually do have the facilities to operate here. We're one of 3 companies who are permitted by the City of Long Beach. The city originally permitted 6 operators, they're now down to 3. So we're one of the leading companies who continues to operate here in Long Beach. A little bit on our background too. We operate in over 120 cities globally. 30 plus countries, 5 continents, looking to enter our 6th continent. So we are the leading micromobility company in the world, and we're really proud of the fact that we're able to bring that operational expertise to the Greater LA region and to Long Beach. The City of Long Beach specifically is moving towards a permanent program in the next month. The application's already been released. The application is due October 31st, and they will be issuing permits for the permanent program mid-November. They are planning to issue permits to up to 6 companies for 1,000 scooters each, and then they'll be able to scale up after a 6-month review to 1,500. We're planning to apply for the application. We want to continue serving the City of Long Beach and their residents. I also want to address a few other things because I heard some things during the conversation and I wanted to clarify because there was definitely a good amount of misinformation there. So California Vehicle Code requires that riders are 18 and over, that they have a valid driver's license. As of January 1st, helmets are no longer required, but we do emphatically encourage our riders to wear them. Vehicles are capped at 15 miles per hour, so they do not go 20 or 25 miles per hour. They can only go as fast as 15 miles per hour. They are not allowed on sidewalks. They are allowed. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Oh my God. Oh boy.
Scooters are not allowed on the sidewalk. They are allowed on the streets. If there's a bicycle lane available, scooters should be ridden in the bicycle lane. If there is no bicycle lane available, they should be ridden on the right-hand lane as close to the curb as possible. They are supposed to follow all the local rules of the road. In terms of insurance and indemnification, I know there was some concerns raised about liability for the city. Every operator who's permitted in Long Beach is required to carry a level of insurance, and they also are required to indemnify the city. And in terms of cost, we operate in cities at no cost, so it's not like a dog share program, it's not like the Metro program. The city doesn't have to pay for that. We provide the vehicles, we provide the staff, we provide the maintenance, we even provide the parking corrals. So all the parking corrals that you see throughout Long Beach, we paid for and installed those. And with the continuation of the program and the second phase of a permanent program, the city will now also be collecting some pretty hefty fees. So they anticipate that they'll be collecting several $100,000 for this scooter program. So this isn't money that's going to be coming out of the taxpayers' money, and out of taxpayers' pockets. Also want to address this notion that scooters are unsafe. That's just false. Scooters are not inherently unsafe. If we want to actually talk about modes of transportation that are not safe, we should probably be looking at cars. Every fatality that we've experienced globally on a scooter, with the exception of maybe 3 or 4, they've all involved cars. Just last year alone, there were 40,000 fatalities, not accidents, fatalities, as a result of a car. That doesn't take into consideration all the other accidents that took place. We're a very car-centric city, and so, not just a car-centric city, we're a very car-centric society, and I know that Long Beach likes to pride itself saying that it's the most bicycle-friendly city in the country, and they're definitely leading the way in the region when it comes to infrastructure and making streets safer for riders. And so we continue to work with the city and with other partners towards that same shared goal. One of the really great things that is part of this pilot program is actually the data sharing aspect. I know folks talked a little bit about road diets today, and so the great part about data is that we're actually able to share data that the city otherwise would not have had. So the city is able to see where trips are starting, where they're ending, routes that people are taking, and all of this data is actually a tool that we're providing to the city and to transportation leaders so that they can actually better plan infrastructure down the road. They'll know where they should be installing bicycle lanes that people will actually use because we're giving them that data. They're seeing what people are riding in real time. I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to attend any of the council meetings earlier this year, but in February, they actually talked about a survey that the city administered to riders because they wanted to find out how people were using these scooters. There's this misconception that people just use scooters for recreation. That's actually not true. At this February council meeting, council and staff both said that they were actually very surprised to hear what the results of the survey said. They found that people were really using these scooters for community purposes. They were using it to get to school, to get to work. They were using it to get to dining, to go to local businesses and shop. And a very small percentage of folks were actually using this for recreation. So we know that folks are actually replacing a lot of these what would have been car rides with a scooter trip. And in the region, we're seeing that 2 out of 5 riders are replacing a car trip with a scooter trip. So what does that mean? That means we're getting cars off the road. That means it's a greener form of transportation. That means it's better for our environment. We just celebrated California Clean Air Day a couple of weeks ago. We know that California as a state continues to struggle with air quality. And that has very real health ramifications for folks. It comes to asthma, and we know that a lot of those environmental factors affect underrepresented, marginalized communities more than anything. And so we continue to work to make sure that our vehicles are accessible, affordable, and good for the environment. We have what we call our Lime Access program. So through our Lime Access program, anyone who qualifies for a local, state, or federally funded program can get reduced rates to ride our vehicles. So rather than the standard rate of $1 to unlock and the 26 cents to ride per minute, they are able to ride for 50 cents to unlock and for 7 cents per minute. And so we want to make sure that folks can continue to use our scooters to get around and to be connected to their community. And we know that we're helping fill that first last mile transportation void because the average ride is actually a mile and it takes about 9 minutes. We know that we're helping folks get to public transit because a quarter of our riders told us that they're using this to get to public transit. The data tells us that too. A few other things. I'm trying to remember what else was spoken about here. I just want to make sure I'm covering it all before I open it up to questions.
Where's the liability end when that product is in the scooter person's hand? So the time they drop it off in the middle of my way when I'm walking home from the gym at 6 in the morning, and it's not just yours, it's several of your competitors. Where does that liability end? I mean, I'm young enough where I can jump over it and move around it, but the average person walking down the street, if they fall over it, hurt themselves, who is liable? The person who dropped it there or your organization?
So
that's a big concern.
Yes,
that's the problem.
Yeah, so we have to deploy our vehicles within parking corrals every morning. Mm-hmm. We are insured and we've identified the city, and so we're insured if something with our scooter is defective, so if an issue with the scooter itself causes a problem, or if one of our employees does something to cause an accident. And so.
But that's my question is, we're probably staying in the middle of the sidewalk where pedestrians, we have a huge walk score here in Long Beach, everybody knows this. This is a big walkable city, one of the biggest, and best in the nation. And your scooter's laying there. Who's responsible if my neighbor falls over it in the morning? Is it the person who purchased the product for the time being, or your company? Where does that line go?
Or the city.
Or the city.
So
have you not, has that happened yet? I mean, that seems.
It's a matter of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lady who got killed in North Long Beach, who's responsible for that?
But, excuse me?
There was a lady who was killed in North Long Beach with a scooter that was laying there.
Sure. And so I think that's a really unfair situation to bring up because.
No, wait, hold on. Let's go one question at a time and allow her the opportunity to answer the question before we ask another one.
Sure. So in terms of the liability, as I said, we're only liable if our scooter is, if something's wrong with the scooter and it causes an accident, or if one of our employees does something with the scooter on the time. So we're not liable
So
for
it's a
that.
problem we're trying to resolve that we don't know how.
In terms of the woman who was unfortunately killed with a scooter, it wasn't one of ours, it was one of our competitors. I also, but regardless,
But
I
say
think
if
it's a
it was
really
one of yours,
unfair, it's a
what
really
would you
unfair
guys do
thing
in
to-
that instance?
It's a really unfair thing, let me continue to talk, it's a really unfair situation to bring up because it wasn't someone riding on a scooter, it was someone with some issues that used a scooter to unfortunately beat someone to death. If it wasn't a scooter, it would have been something else that you would have picked up on the street. So it's not a matter of, oh, the scooter is unsafe and the woman was killed because the scooter is unsafe. It was someone else, so I'm not really sure how that's relevant, yeah.
Sure, thank you.
My understanding is that scooters are not supposed to be on the streets that have a speed limit greater than, what is it, 25? 25. Why then are so many of them positioned on the corners of Ocean Boulevard, which no one can ride on according to the rules? And there's no bike lane. Why are they there?
So that's probably a better question for the city because before any operator is actually allowed to install a parking corral, it had to be ran by the city. So we can't install unless the city approved it. So probably a better question to ask the city.
So
we installed it only if the city approved
So
it.
in reference to her question then, is it your company's liability because your employee did not corral or did not pick up the scooters when they should have?
Our employees always pick up the scooters when they should and they always deploy them properly within corrals.
They are left on the sidewalks overnight.
In the middle of the street, they left, I mean, literally, they just drop them when they drop them. That's the point of it.
Our employees only deploy scooters within parking corrals.
I guess, no, they're not deploying them. They are not picking up scooters.
The riders
that
are
have been left.
The scooters are laying all over the city.
But your customers are throwing them all over the city. Your employees are not picking them up in sufficient time to clear the hazard.
So we're completely compliant with what the city requires us to do. We deploy them where we're supposed to. The program is dockless. This program is dockless. It doesn't require people to park vehicles within a dock. People are allowed to ride to the scooter and they're allowed to park their vehicle anywhere. They don't have to return to the dock.
Why is that? Because like a bicycle owner, like I ride my bike, I can't just drop my bike in the middle of the street. If
You
my
can if you want. You just want to walk it. You just want to walk it because
so
you don't want to get stolen.
as a bike person, no, you cannot just drop your bicycle in the middle of the street.
You don't do it because you don't want it to get stolen.
Well,
Which is why
even
you
if
walk it.
so again, are you here to listen to us or are you here to justify? So we are having a problem.
here to answer
All these people are upset. We've been talking about this for months. We are having a problem. People are just dropping a scooter in the middle of the sidewalk. There's
Or in
no-
the middle of the driveway coming out of the park.
So
And you
how
can
is,
contact the city to get those.
why don't you guys have to require them to dock it somewhere safe?
Because dock systems don't work.
Alright, so everybody, real quick, love the enthusiasm. Much like most of our city council meetings, we did not have this devolve into shouting. We don't have enough mass transit to go to everywhere. This is a go-between that doesn't cost us any money. Here's the thing. So what we understand is there's an issue from the public, and there's a company that has liabilities and different things plugged in. The city can only do so much. So what we're asking people to do is be good citizens. Well, we know asking people to be good citizens doesn't work. So what we can do is, hold on,
Let's do one person at a time.
What we can do is take those instances and say, okay, here's the thing. talking earlier about the geomapping, maybe they don't have to be docking sites or whatever it is, but it needs to be somewhere, and if it doesn't get dropped somewhere safely, or if it's over on its side or something like that, the card that's on file that was the last ride gets fined, or something. Again,
Do you know that a lot of these people who ride the scooters come in on cruise ships and they're here for half an hour?
Oh, understood. The using of the products aren't the problem. It's the left and it's not my problem. It's the cigarette butt that gets shucked. All these different things.
What are you doing to tell your customers what the rules of the road are? When
Every
someone comes
customer-
off the cruise ship, picks up your land scooter, does he have to go through a half-hour training program?
Let's let her answer the question.
A few things here. As I said, California Vehicle Code requires that everyone who rides a scooter has a valid driver's license. So we actually do require a driver's license scanning at the beginning of someone downloading our app. When someone downloads the app, they have to go through a mandatory onboarding process. So folks have a valid driver's license, they know the local rules of the road, and they have to go through an onboarding process. Everyone has to go through it, it's mandatory. We also have promotional materials. We have hang tags that are printed and they hang on our scooters, and those say, don't ride on the sidewalk, one rider per person, you must be 18 and over, please wear a helmet. No.
Okay, so we have time for two more
That's an enforcement
questions.
issue. We're not an enforcement body, that's what the police department does.
I think what's clear here is that we started this experiment without necessarily knowing what the outcome was going to be. And there needs to be clear, understandable rules of the road, not only for the companies, but also for the riders and also for the public to understand how this is supposed to work. And that's not been done. They were literally just put out there and hope for the best. And I'm still expecting fatalities to occur because I don't personally believe those things are designed to be on a roadway competing with a 4,000-pound car. And I also don't think they should be on a sidewalk at speeds that exceed what a pedestrian can normally walk at. So we've got a conflict there. I think they're useful. I think they can be constrained. I think people are going to have, but I don't think like the old days of Microsoft that you throw a product out there and then hope for the best and see where the problems are. And that's kind of the way this was undertaken. And that, I think, is the point that some of us are making up here. The city council needs to direct this thing. And it hasn't. All they did was say, oh, it's a great idea, let's throw it out here and see what the hell happens. I personally think that it's going to be a catastrophe, but they're going to wait. Just like the transportation department used to tell me, well, we will do something with guardrails, but right now there are only 4 fatalities and we have to have 5 before we take an action.
Great, we have time for one more question.
Actually, do your due diligence, because the council has actually been directing. This program has been underway for a year. As I said, if you've gone to the council meetings earlier this year, you would have seen that this has actually been discussed pretty extensively. And I'd have to disagree. You know,
It's not
scooters and
showing
bicycle
up.
riders have a right to the streets too. It's not.